is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
5 things to watch here on KC Sports Network, getting you ready for Chiefs-Packers on Sunday Night Football in Lambeau. Maddie Lane, hi, how are we?
Oh, I'm ready to be leaping into this Packers game here on Sunday night. I'm ready, Craig. You?
Yeah, of course I'm ready. I'm ready to watch Steve Spagnuolo put on another masterclass. I believe, if I'm counting, this will be number 12 on the year. Number 12 for Steve Spagnuolo.
You're going to hear from us. You're going to hear from a bunch of different voices here on KC Sports Network. We are going to give you 2 things to watch today. Normally give you 1, but we're just so excited about this game, we decided to give you 2. We're going to start with the offense, of course, as always. One thing that the Packers have struggled with, Matthew, is tackling. I think the Chiefs are going to try to make the Packers miss some tackles.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good idea going into a football game, is to make the opposing team miss some tackles.
Interesting.
However, the Packers in particular have not tackled well this year. They have missed over 100 tackles on the year. For context, the Chiefs have been pretty good at it, and they've only missed 71. So there's a pretty big gap there between the Chiefs and the Packers. I think what we saw last week from the Chiefs against the Raiders was putting the ball out into the skill players' hands quickly, and then, challenging guys like Marcus Peters to make a tackle in the open field. And we saw how that went. It got him cut. And so getting the ball out to Rashee Rice, getting the ball out to Pacheco, Sky Moore, all these different players, and saying, hey, we know you guys haven't been good at tackling, specifically in the secondary. Why don't you guys go out and try to tackle our skill players who have proven to be pretty good, especially if Kadarius Toney can come back. You get Rashee Rice going, get some of these guys going down the field in the open field, and make these Packers players, make these tackles. And it's cold. It might be a little bit snowy. Sometimes that's a hard field position to change direction. It's always going to be a little bit easier for the offensive players. I think you could see some big yak production from the Chiefs in this game, just given the matchup that's coming up with them here against the Packers.
And the Chiefs just got done running a very screen-heavy, bubble screens, checkdowns for running backs, those sorts of things, putting those guys in space, allowing them, space to run into the secondary. And against a Green Bay Packers defense that struggles to bring guys to the ground, this is the perfect time for that. Let Rashee Rice run in through some of that. Let's see maybe a little bit of Isaiah Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire out in space, and force these guys to have to come up and make a play. Especially the safeties. They've not been particularly good coming downhill, filling the alley. Challenge them to be better players, better football players, better tacklers than they have been throughout this season. You can still get away with running a lot of the simple stuff that we saw the Chiefs run last week against the Las Vegas Raiders and get the opportunity to make these guys miss in space. So I think that's a good way to keep things simple and still create plenty of yardage, plenty of ball movement, plenty of efficiency on offense.
And I think, going against a team that struggles to tackle consistently, actually, it plays well to some of the stuff that we've seen this team have success with recently, and, we talked about how, the offense kind of got going a little bit with some of the manufactured touches and the screen game, and okay, this is a great opportunity for that to manifest itself there too, right? Because, hey, the Chiefs relied on yards after the catch last week. That was a good thing. It worked really well. So let's see if they can. Do the same thing that they had. That they kind of had last week.
Yeah, and the Chiefs relying on yards after the catch. That's what they do consistently. But right now they're number 1 in the NFL in yards after the catch. That is the one thing offensively that they are doing better than any other team. Them and then the Commanders. I wonder if you could draw any direct correlations there. But the Chiefs are leading the NFL right now in yards after the catch. I think we all saw them kind of hit the ground running a little bit. They started to figure some stuff out offensively last week versus the Raiders, and a lot of that was creating yards after the catch, throwing a lot of screens, keeping the ball short, getting it out on time. I don't think you can build the entire offense out of that, but this particular matchup versus the Packers, a team that, isn't going to do a whole lot to give you exotic looks. They're not going to change what they do a ton, so you can have good looks. You should be able to scheme up players getting in the open field relatively frequently. The Packers try to win on execution, and they haven't been executing well in terms of bringing a ball carrier down. So seeing these guys open, get them in the open field, and then, do what you do best right now and just go continue to run after the catch. I think you could have a lot of big plays come from the Chiefs that way.
Do you know where Andy Reid is at his best? When he knows generally where the defense is going to be, and the picture's not going to change very much. He's going to have all sorts of looks and all sorts of things that may seem basic, but are putting a lot on the plate of these players on the Green Bay Packers defense. Make them overthink things, make them overrun some of the angles a little bit, use the explosive nature of the wide receivers that you have on that team. We talk about all the time where their shortcomings are. There are a lot of very explosive players in this wide receiving core, so utilize them to try and eliminate those angles for the defense.
All right, let's move on to point number 2. We're going to the defensive side of the ball. Want to see the safeties get involved a little bit better, play a little bit better this week, play a little more consistency, right, Craig?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen good safety play throughout this season. Justin Reed has been a quality football player. Brian Cook has been good throughout the year. Mike Edwards has made some fantastic plays. But it's been a couple of weeks since we've kind of seen that elevated to the level that we had seen before. I want to see more of that because we are going to see a lot of explosive plays for the Green Bay Packers. They are going to attempt those down the field. Mike Edwards is seeing more time on the field. Now is a time where he needs to show up. Now is a time where you need to see Brian Cook and Justin Reed making sure that they are staying over the top of these guys, giving the cornerbacks help, because there are going to be plenty of opportunities for the Green Bay Packers to go downfield. That is what their offense is built off of, and they are going to try and hit them a lot. They can't play to the level that they have over the past couple of games. We need to see some of that early season safety play again. We know it's in them. We know that these guys are capable of playing at a high level. That is one of the few areas where the Green Bay Packers offense, when you look at it on tape, you cannot have poor safety play against this team because they will beat you with explosive plays. Chiefs have been really good at limiting those so far this week. Safety play is going to be paramount to continuing that.
Yeah, and especially when you kind of look at this Packers offense and how they've been evolving throughout the year, they've been pushing the ball downfield vertically a lot more frequently, and they've been doing it better. So you're going to want to keep, these safeties, when they're playing deep, they can't take anything underneath. They can't let guys get behind them, especially if cornerbacks are expecting help. And then you look at the athleticism of this Packers wide receiver room, they're really athletic guys. That's all they draft, is big athletic players at the wide receiver position. That's kind of like their entire draft philosophy. So the safeties are going to have to be able to remain deep. They're going to have to, do their job correctly. We've seen in some games here recently where Justin Reed gets a little out of position. We've seen some games where Brian Cook has, misread some plays and let guys get behind him. I think Mike Edwards, even these past few weeks, has made a couple wrong reads on some plays. We need to start trending back the other direction. And I do think part of it is that the Chiefs are running a little bit more extra stuff. They're doing more rotations. They're getting a little bit more exotic, not just in their coverage, but like they're expanding their defensive playbook as the year goes on, just like they do every year. That is putting more pressure on these safeties. It's giving them more options, more things to look at. And they just need to make sure they're on their P's and Q's for this game, because if they're not, the Packers are, a walking big play with some of those players that they have and the way Jordan Love's been playing, throwing the ball downfield.
It is always fun talking shop with my two friends, Craig and Maddie. Now, let's talk to barbershop. What you got, Shawn Barber?
Hey, how you doing? This is Shawn Barber from The Process. And my one thing to watch this week versus the Green Bay Packers, it's kind of a mindset or a collective agreement that there are some teams in the NFL that are definitely on the brink of a second half surge. We talk about the Denver Broncos. We talk about the Houston Texans. We talk about the Dallas Cowboys, and yes, the Green Bay Packers. All of those teams in the last 4 weeks are kind of revived. They're kind of like the phoenix rising out of the ash. These teams would have been almost thought of as afterthoughts or not playoff teams just about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And all 4 of these teams are getting consistent quarterback play. They're getting unnamed and unknown wide receivers rise to the occasion throughout the game. Defensively, they're getting an extreme amount of pressure on the quarterback, and then they're getting really good red zone defense. So I think those 4 factors is something that we got to hope that we evolve or and somehow have a solution for when it comes to our game Sunday against the Packers. Is we got to be very good offensively in the red zone. We got to be very good at protecting our quarterback. We have to take our secondary and make sure that that's a strength against what I believe is not a strength when it comes to the Green Bay Packers. They have no true number 1 wide receiver, but we can't let the collectiveness of all 3 of those wide receivers, Watson, Dobbs, and Reed, become collectively a significant part of their passing game. And then we got to take care of the running back. AJ is a bowling ball of a running back, and if we can avoid him shortening the chains and keeping them on schedule, then our defense will be able to make some plays, pressure Jordan Love, force him to make some mistakes. He's been pretty clean for the last 3 weeks and leading his team to wins over the Chargers, the Broncos, and then most recently upsetting the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving. So what I think that this team needs to do, the one thing they need to do is not allow this second half surge from the Green Bay Packers to be something that knocks us off of schedule. We got to stay to the course, do what we're doing, defensively keep evolving at all 3 levels, and offensively, let's continue to stay in rhythm and stay on stride. So that is my thing to watch with the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Green Bay Packers. Back to you.
Thanks as always to our guy, Shawn Barber, always dropping the knowledge. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us here on 5 Things. You're getting different perspectives from a lot of different people across KC Sports Network. And now it is time to hear from the guys from outside the trenches. Yep, Tucker Franklin, Brian Henley, Nick Leckie, talking about the trenches.
All right, welcome in here. Outside the trenches, checking in with you guys. Of course, you guys know we're talking about the trenches. That's what we do here on Outside the Trenches, hanging out with Nick Leckie, Big B, Brian Hanley, talking about the Chiefs offensive line. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball for the Chiefs. Chiefs offensive line versus the Packers defensive line. Packers coming off of a big game against the Detroit Lions where they had a guy have a pretty big performance, Big B.
Yeah, I mean, he got after the Detroit Lions. Almost, it looked like they weren't even trying to block him some of the time. He was just physically whipping them. So it'll be a challenge for the Chiefs. He'll be able to pick which side he wants to be on. I'm pretty sure that's what a lot of defensive ends that don't have 2 dominating ends anymore do. They just kind of decide where they feel comfortable. So he's going to move around, and it'll be tough. Packers are playing, their defense is playing really well, especially the inside or just the defensive line in general is starting to play really, really well.
You know, I think for me, for talking about the Packers defensive, you know, I like, did you say Rashawn Gary?
I don't think you said his name, but that's who we're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay, Rashawn Gary. Okay, so and then his bookend too, Preston Smith, right, 6'5", 261. That dude put a spin move on Penei Sewell. It hurt me. And it was textbook. And it was like, Penei Sewell is legit. He's like 3rd, 4th year guy out of Oregon. And he is legit. And he put him this spin move on him. And I was like, good God almighty. Watch it. And he's dropping back into pass coverage. Preston Smith, the big body, Mississippi State. Like, man, it's Chris Jones alumnus category type stuff. And if I'm, you know, Donovan Smith or Juwan Taylor, man, I'm like, hey, give me some help over here. 3rd and medium plus, I need help. Just presence. just some presence. You know, Kelsey, come here, rub some Taylor Swift dust on me, and then get going.
That's what I was going to say. I think that they'll do a little bit of what they've done with the Kelsey split in tight. Like he's off the line of scrimmage in a 2-point stance. The tight kind of splits, and so it allows like Rashawn Gary, whoever it is, over there to kind of widen out a little bit more and have the chip and then have the help basically there is what they've done a few times to kind of negate some of these top-tier pass rushers. And looking at it, do what you want with PFF grades, but it's a good little point to kind of navigate a conversation from. Looking at Rashawn Gary, 91.9 defensive grade, 2nd highest grade on the Green Bay Packers team from that game. Against the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving with everyone watching. Pass rush grade of 90.2. So he had an elite day rushing the passer, had an elite day all over. It had 4 total pressures according to PFF with 3 sacks, 1 hurry on that side of the ball too. Clay Walker, another guy I want to throw out there because a guy I like coming out of Georgia. He's a very solid football player. They got some good linebackers. So that second level, it's going to be an interesting sledding there for the Chiefs running the football. They didn't run it very well against actually the Raiders, maybe as well as we anticipated them to run against the Raiders. So maybe they try to get back on track, but it's going to be tough sledding against them to kind of maybe pull back the reins on Rashawn Gary a little bit. Say, hey, we're going to run this football. We're going to run it down your throat, so you don't have to. You got to hold up a little bit so you can't get after the quarterback. I'm sure Andy will have those things all schemed up. But let's flip to the other side of the ball. Chiefs defense started off a little shaky against the Raiders on Sunday, but then they turned it around. They looked just fine once it came down to it. Chris Jones even sticking his nose in the run game a little bit when it came up when it mattered, Big B. What do you think about this Chiefs defensive line going up against this Green Bay Packers offensive line?
Well, the first thing is that they're going to be without Aaron Jones in the backfield because he is hurt again. So I don't know if the Chiefs will be able to feast per se, but I think they're going to be able to handle and manage the Packers offensive line. I just believe that they're going to be able to have their way, keep them in a lot of third and long situations, which again is key to the Chiefs' success because the Chiefs can get after the passer. They absolutely can do that. I know it doesn't always equate to, 7-8 sacks a game or anything crazy like that, but they can put some pressure on a quarterback. So I believe the Chiefs are still, they're going to be able to do that. I think they'll have their way with the Packers offensive line.
Yeah, I think so. I think, they're playing, Packers got Zach Tom playing right tackle, and I think him versus Amenahue, I think Amenahue is that guy who's going to help them in the playoffs for the Chiefs. I mean, big body, defensive end, can just do a bunch of things. He's got that slender frame, and I just love the way he plays. And he knows how to turn it on late. He knows when you need it. And so for him, all this attention gets put on Karlaftis, Dana, and Chris Jones. But it's like Amenahue is like, he's coming in, man. He knows how to thrive in that system, especially with Chris Jones being that focal point.
Yep. Amenahue's really underrated. Really underrated.
I agree. You brought him up, Nick. George Karlaftis now has the team lead in sacks. Surpassed Chris Jones with his 1 sack on Sunday in Las Vegas. Sacked his old teammate, Aiden O'Connell, the former Purdue Boilermaker. He's been playing well. Has a lot of pressures. He's up there with the big dogs, too. Don't forget about Drew Tranquil on the second level. He's been playing really well at the linebacker spot with Nick Bolton, who has been activated. His practice window has been activated for him this time. So we'll hopefully get to see Nick Bolton a little bit soon. Drew Tranquil's been doing well. Has been playing well in the interim there. I believe he actually had the highest graded PFF grade from. He had the highest PFF grade from the Chiefs-Raiders game this last week. So he's been playing well. The linebackers playing well. Chiefs defense humming at a great level. Let's send it back to you guys for more 5 Things.
Thanks to the guys over at Outside the Trenches. Always great hearing from them. And now it's time to get weird. Only Weird Games. Josh Briscoe, Seth Kaiser. Joshua, hello.
All right, here's 2/3 of the Weird Games crew. Honestly, that still might be too much. Joshua Briscoe and Seth Kaiser with you to take a couple of cracks at this game, Chiefs and Packers. Seth, you wrote up in the Chief of the North newsletter this week. We're looking back to look forward a little bit, and I'll do some on the offensive side as well. But you wrote about the Chiefs' defense and the ways they kept that game from getting even more out of hand than like it was going to be early on. It was 14-0. It certainly should have been 17-0. It probably should have been 21-0. But you have not yet found the desire to get really, really concerned about not just every, but any level of the Chiefs defense. What did you see when you took a closer look at that? Well, what I've decided to do is treat the first approximately 15 minutes of the Chiefs-Raiders game like our last episode of Only Weird Games, pretend it doesn't exist. Non-canonical. And so what I did instead was I focused on something a lot more fun, the end of the game, because, man, lots of things went well then. One of my favorite drives that the Chiefs have had all year on the defensive side of the ball came early in the fourth quarter, where the Raiders were down 11. There's a little under 8 minutes left in the game. You need points, right? Instead, they went 4-and-out, basically ended the game. Even though the Chiefs only got a field goal out of it, they were able to drag another 3-4 minutes out, go up 14. The game was over. And one of my favorite things about that drive, and something that I think is worth at least keeping an eye on as we look forward to Chiefs-Packers, is the way that playmakers at every level of the defense mattered on that particular drive and affected the coverages that they were able to call, the variety of things they were able to call. And then when you get to up front, so 1st and 10, Charles Amenahue just beats Colton Miller like he stole something, although not really, because, he didn't actually hurt him. He just ran around him, and I don't know why you'd run around someone who stole something, but maybe he got around, like Colton Miller was a security guard and Charles Amenahue stole something. Yeah, Charles Omenihu was on his way to steal something, and he was excited about it because he was moving. It was Black Friday, when people actually went out for Black Friday, right? And so he has pressure. He has pressure on O'Connell so quickly. Ooh, did you get something on Black Friday?
I got this Furby once. This is what video side here. It's the old tuxedo Furby. Oh, my mom could see this now. That she knew I had this back in my little display. This is the Black Friday haul of a lifetime somewhere in the late 90s.
People don't understand the psychotic behavior that went into getting a hold of Furbies. Let me just tell you. Yeah, your mom straight up killed someone for that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I've still got. It's the tuxedo Furby, except for its mane is just sort of. I would say like a red tie dye. I don't know what happened, but it's very. I love him.
Yeah, hey, it works out well. So similarly to Josh's mom at a Black Friday special, getting him a Furby, Charles Omenihu, he creates pressure so quickly on that first down that I kept thinking it was a screen because he got by so fast. But when I look at the scheme and then the blocking scheme and then the routes run, I don't think it was. I just think he destroyed Colton Miller. On second down, you see some good coverage. You see some pressure from Deshaun Wharton. And then third down, you have Drew Tranquill, because you can do psychotic things with your rotations, is able to go from one side of the field to the other and tackle Hunter Renfrow a yard short of the first down. And then, of course, fourth down, you have Chris Jones being impossible to deal with and destroying a play. And what I love about that, the Chiefs' defense is elite this year. They're a high-level defense. They've been very good in every single game, every single one of them. Had the Chiefs' offense given them any support against the Eagles, I don't know if the Eagles put up more than 14 points because it took time after time after time of the offense failing. And where their strength is they don't have necessarily anywhere that's below average at all at any level of the defense. Their pass rush could be better. It's not elite. Their linebacker group isn't elite. Their secondary, I think, probably is elite. But they are very good everywhere, and they can play any style of game. And that's one thing that you saw late against the Raiders that I think is going to benefit them against the Packers and basically any team because they can play any style of football that they need to. And it's just such a cool thing to watch after years of defenses that have been decent but flawed or just real bad if you go back a little farther.
This is also from the Raiders game, but as I mentioned on Only Word Games on Monday, I straight up missed the first drive or two of the game because I was trying to help my little sister get the hook out of the beak of an ibis that is doing well now, by the way. It's getting re-released. It's a great story for everybody involved, except for the Raiders, because this is what happened early on. I went back through and was trying to say, okay, so what was actually happening there outside of the chaos of the way I was watching that game in a weird circumstance? It was a lot of I think, by the book, successful but relatively short runs from Josh Jacobs, the Raiders offense. Aiden O'Connell handling pressure pretty well, like we talked about. It was a lot of short, successful plays, and then you get a 33-yarder to Devontae Adams on the first drive, and 3rd and 5, third down, get off the field opportunity. It ends up being a touchdown instead of what would have been, I'm pretty sure, settling for a field goal there instead. That's the Raiders making a play and the Chiefs having to wear that. Then they got to 3rd and 6 until Jacoby Myers caught that pass on 3rd and 6 in the second drive. 3rd and 11 at the 22. They got behind the sticks because they absolutely smothered Josh Jacobs on second down. Rush 4, Aiden O'Connell steps up, hits a dart to Adams. Really close to a first down. They should have gone for it after that. They kick the field goal. They miss it, obviously. And then Josh Jacobs' next drive just houses one from a million yards out, and several things seem to go wrong on that play. So that going through back, like play log stuff very simplistically, because that didn't happen again in the second half at all. Josh Jacobs had 8 carries for 16 yards. Devontae Adams had 0 catches. I am not looking back at that and seeing any sort of consistent unsolved questions, right? It was a couple of broken plays or Devontae Adams making a play. Yep, all right, yeah, that's fine. Zach Wilson made some great throws in that Jets game also. Zach Wilson and Aiden O'Connell got to have a couple of the best moments that a quarterback has had against the Chiefs defense this year. Sometimes football is a silly sport where the ball isn't around. Weird things happen. But I am getting the feeling also from you here that there is no particular fear that the Chiefs defense is not authentically what we've seen it be to this point. So pivoting to a Packers team that does not have Devontae Adams, but has a little stable of young, improving wide receivers. Steve Spagnuolo said on Thursday that the Packers wide receivers remind him a little bit of the Chiefs defensive backs last year. He expanded on it a little bit, and it's kind of a funny comparison because they're very different positions but go head to head. So is there anything right now with this version of Jordan Love or the Packers offense that you think might be a legitimate kind of crack to the Chiefs defense?
I think really, I like the way that you framed that with what happened against the Raiders. It wasn't any kind of particular crack in the foundation. It was either someone on the other team just making a really good play. So like another example that would have been later on in the game when Trent McDuffie gave up like a 20, 30 yard play down the right sideline. The coverage was perfect. Just the throw was perfect and there was a great catch. And perfect offense beats perfect defense in today's NFL. And the big thing about that, what makes that important is that it's about consistency. Can you keep doing that? And the Chiefs defense this year has forced teams. It's like you've got to execute really, really well all across the board and not just execute well, but go above and beyond to borderline perfection to move the ball on us. So you might be able to do it for a drive. You might break off one giant touchdown if you've got one of the best running backs in the game who happens to get alone one-on-one against a safety who's not Brian Cook or Justin Reed. Because I think if that was Reed or Cook, especially Cook, I think they would have been able to at least slow him down long enough for the rest of the defense to rally. You can maybe do that. But can you do it consistently? No team has done it consistently against the Chiefs, and they've played some really, 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 really good offenses. I mean, it's not like the Chargers offense is inconsistent, but it's really good. The Lions offense is really good. The Dolphins offense is really good. The Eagles offense has been really good, at least especially lately. I mean, these are good offenses, and none of them have been able to perform against the Chiefs, really. If the offense was what it was, if the Chiefs offense was what it was last year, the Chiefs would be undefeated right now. It's an unfortunate thing. Actually, I hadn't thought of it that way. So I don't know why I did that. It's really a long road to a short thought, which has been kind of a theme for today, that in terms of what the Packers do, the Chiefs are kind of starting to reach that point that we'll see because the Packers have a really good offensive line. And that maybe is something they haven't quite faced. Okay, we can't get pressure with 4. What are we going to do? Maybe that's what happens. Or maybe they still get a little pressure with 4. And then you're thinking, hey, great. It's more about what the Chiefs can do than what opposing offenses can do. There's not a thing to pick at. And so if they're able to do something exceptionally, they'll move the ball that drive. You want to do it again? You want to move the ball again? You got to do it exceptionally again the next drive, and then the next drive, and the next drive. And I think that's where really good defenses wear you down, especially when you're good at all 3 levels.
I was thinking there, oh man, I'm not sure we actually really declared a thing. But then the thing that you just declared is that the Chiefs defense doesn't have a thing to pick at. So
Nice.
Take that, I guess. That's our one thing.
Thanks to Joshua Briscoe and Seth Kaiser on Only Weird Games. It's been really great having them. And a reminder, you can hear us and them on Tuesdays and on Thursdays. You're always getting now 2 live shows, both of those shows, Only Weird Games and Casey Laboratory, Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's a big content day over at KC Sports Network. That's been 5 things getting you ready for Chiefs and Packers. Thank you all so much for listening, for watching KC Sports Network content. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.